Good morning. I'm Hassan Giordano, and this is your DMV Daily Dose for Wednesday, March the 18th, 2020.
It's currently clear and 39 degrees in Baltimore. Expect cloudy skies starting in the afternoon, and rain tonight with mixed conditions for the rest of the day. Today's high will be 55 degrees, and the low will be 39.
According to ESPN, Hall of Fame quarterback Tom Brady is leaving the New England Patriots to head for the warmer climate of Tampa Bay. The Baltimore Ravens have re-signed defensive end Jihad Ward and defensive tackle Justin Ellis, according to media reports. As well as on the defensive line, the team has also agreed to a trade for Jacksonville Jaguars Pro Bowl defensive end Calais Campbell and agreed to a 3-year, $30 million with Los Angeles Rams defensive lineman Michael Brockers. Defensive tackle Domato Pico Sr., another midseason acquisition by the Ravens, is a pending free agent. The Ravens have also given restricted free agent center Matt Scorer a right of first refusal tender, the team announced. The 1-year offer is worth a projected $2.1 million and would allow the Ravens to match any offer that Scorer signs with another team. If they choose not to, the Ravens would not receive a draft pick compensation. The Ravens also placed a tender on exclusive right free agent running back Gus Edwards, who signed as an undrafted free agent in 2018 out of Rutgers and rushed for 718 yards in 2018 and 711 yards in 2019. Edwards, 24 years old, will earn a base salary of $750,000 in 2020. They placed the franchise tag on linebacker Matthew Judon, traded tight end Hayden Hurst to the Falcons for some draft picks, and re-signed wide receiver and return specialist DeAnthony Thomas to a 1-year contract extension, who is set to become an unrestricted free agent on Wednesday, today. The AP is reporting that former Vice President Joe Biden swept the victory in Florida, Illinois, and Arizona last night, increasingly pulling away with the Democratic presidential primary upended by the coronavirus and building pressure on Bernie Sanders to abandon his campaign. Now, the former first vice president was his third big night in as many weeks, coming amid tremendous uncertainty confronting the Democratic contest as it collides with efforts to slow the spread of the virus known as the coronavirus or COVID-19 that have shut down large swaths of American life. Polls were shuttered in Ohio, and although balloting went ahead as scheduled in 3 other states, election workers and voters reported problems. Biden's quest for his party's nomination now seems well within reach. He needs less than half of the remaining delegates in order to win the party's nomination. The party establishment has also lined up behind him as the best option in November to try and unseat President Donald Trump. Using a live stream address to address supporters from his home in Delaware, Biden seemed ready to move past the primary. He paid tribute to Sanders for advancing key issues like affordable health care and combating climate change. During remarks earlier in the night, the Vermont senator said little about the future of the race and instead focused on the coronavirus outbreak. Now, as Biden and Sanders consider their next steps, Trump formally clinched the Republican presidential nomination after facing minimal opposition. But much of the action was on the Democratic side, where higher vote totals in some key states suggested enthusiasm that even the coronavirus couldn't contain. Turnout in Florida's Democratic primary was on pace to approach 2 million voters, surpassing the 1.7 million who cast ballots just 4 years ago. Still, the public health and economic havoc wreaked by the coronavirus will influence how the presidential contest unfolds. Rallies and other big events have been canceled. Democratic National Committee Chairman Tom Perez urged states with upcoming primaries to expand vote by mail and absentee balloting, as well as polling station hours, trying to ensure that the primary isn't further hampered going forward. And Maryland Governor Larry Hogan did just that yesterday. He postponed the upcoming April 28th primary election until June 2nd. stating that he was directing the state's Board of Election to come up with a plan on how the election will be handled by April 3rd. The critical election for not just president, but for the future of Baltimore City's leadership will now likely have early voting dates held between Thursday, May 21st to Thursday, May 28th from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., which includes Memorial Day weekend. However, the general election for the vacant 7th congressional seat, vacated following the death of Elijah Cummings last year, will remain on April 28th, but will be a mail-only election. Board of Elections officials will mail all voters of this district a ballot between Democratic nominee Kwesi Mfume and Republican nominee Kim Klacik, and voters will have to cast their ballots and mail it back to the Board of Elections in a self-addressed stamped envelope that will have to be postmarked by 11:59 on April 28th. Now, 3 other states besides Maryland and Ohio, including Louisiana, Georgia, and Kentucky, are moving to push back their upcoming primaries, and others may yet to do so in the future. That has left the Democratic primary calendar empty until March 29th, when Puerto Rico is scheduled to go to the polls. But their leaders also are working to reschedule a balloting there as well. Now, Governor Hogan also acted yesterday to further limit people-to-people interaction by limiting public transportation. Maryland backed off of plans to cut bus service, but public transportation passengers will see fewer light rail, subway, and MARC trains, while drivers will move the statewide cashless toll collections as a part of a series of transportation changes ordered Tuesday. Hogan also cited to limit the number of people at BWI Marshall Airport while suspending operations of the state's vehicle emissions inspection program so that the sites can be used for drive-through testing of the deadly virus. The measures taken after Monday's shutdown of bars and restaurants, except for takeout, came as 20 more cases of the coronavirus were confirmed in Maryland, a 54% increase in the largest one-day spike thus far. At least 57 people have confirmed COVID-19 infections in the state. Hogan urged officials and employers to consider better solutions to the coronavirus outbreak than slowing down an already delay-ridden system, such as allowing staggered work hours. The Maryland Department of Transportation's MTA initially announced Tuesday afternoon that 23 bus routes in Baltimore would be suspended, but later in the evening said that they would delay that move. Still, other modes remained affected. The light rail and Metro subway will run on Saturday schedules, while MARC commuter trains to Washington and commuter buses will run less frequently as well. Ridership on the MARC commuter train to Washington, for example, is down 70% and will run on the more limited R schedule with a few additional trains, according to the MTA, while commuter bus ridership is down 25 to 30% and will run on the S schedule. Mobility and paratransit services will continue booking medical trips such as dialysis, chemotherapy, hospitals, clinics, mental health facilities, pharmacies, and grocery stores trips. While other MTA bus services won't change for now, passengers will enter through the rear door of the buses to minimize operator contact and are encouraged to pay via the CharmPass mobile ticketing app, the Charm card, or paper ticket that will be visually validated. These changes can be found at www.mta.maryland.gov/coronavirus. Now, the state's confirmed COVID-19 infections, 37 are between the ages of 18 and 64, and the other 20 are older than 65, Hogan spokesman Mike Ritchie said in a tweet yesterday. No minors have tested positive for the disease in Maryland, and no one has died as of yet. The Sun's Pamela Wood and Luke Broadwater are reporting that Maryland lawmakers gave final approval last night to a sweeping education reform bill designed to restore the state's public schools to among the best in the nation. The bill has been debated throughout the Maryland General Assembly session, but took on new urgency once lawmakers agreed to end their session tonight on Wednesday, more than 2 weeks earlier than expected due to the growing corona outbreak. Light applause rang out in the House of Delegates as the vote board lit up with a 96 to 38 vote total. The bill also includes a variety of programs designated to significantly improve public schools, ranging from expanding pre-K for children from poor families to raising teacher pay to improving art schools, high concentrations of students from low-income families. The programs carry an eventual cost of nearly $4 billion per year at full implementation in 2030, which would be split between the state and local governments. The Senate added a provision to the bill, however, to halt the expanded programs if the state's revenue drops by 7.5% per year, an important consideration given the economic uncertainty following the spread of the COVID-19 illness. There also would be an academic checkpoint in 2025. Now, the Republican governor, Larry Hogan, now has the option of either vetoing the bill, signing it into law, or allowing it to become law without his signature. If he vetoes the bill, lawmakers could override that veto during a special legislative session tentatively planned for May. The bill cleared the House and the Senate by veto-proof margins. Meanwhile, lawmakers also made progress on the budget, which they are required to pass by the Maryland Constitution before they adjourn tonight. The House approved the state's $47.9 billion budget with a 126-8 vote last night. Included in the budget bills is a provision to allow Hogan to tap up to $100 million in reserves to pay for responding to this pandemic. Earlier, lawmakers passed an emergency bill that Hogan signed into law, giving him authority to take up to $50 million from the state's reserves to fight the coronavirus. In the Baltimore Sun's Justin Fenton is reporting that 7 people were believed shot early yesterday in Baltimore after a gunman opened fire on a group of people and an officer who was passing through the area fired back. Police Commissioner Michael Harrison said that the officer was on patrol around 6:30 in the Madison Park neighborhood when he saw a gunman with a semi-automatic assault rifle aimed at people congregated on the corner of McMeekin Street and Utah Place. The officer fired at the suspect, but was not known how many shots the officer discharged or whether he hit anyone. The Baltimore Sun's Tim Pruden is also reporting, as the Baltimore Sun says, that 61 people have reported homicides have been reported 78 days into the new year. And Tim Pruden is reporting on the quarrel between prosecutors and one Baltimore City judge who continued with a loaded court docket yesterday in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. Even with schools, offices, and restaurants closed by the coronavirus, Baltimore City Circuit Court Judge Melissa Finn was on the bench Tuesday morning to hear guilty pleas. This continued business required the presence of lawyers, clerks, and other courtroom staff, leading city prosecutors to urge Finn to suspend her busy docket for risk of spreading the virus. Now, the chief deputy of state's attorney asked Finn to close her docket of the reception court. He noted an order on Monday from Chief Judge Mary Ellen Barbera to close courts across the state except for emergency operations such as bail reviews. However, later in the day, Finn reaffirmed her position by announcing in a message that she would continue to hear guilty pleas through April 3rd. All other cases would be postponed. Now, in a letter to the court Friday, Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby wrote that her prosecutors worried about appearing in the busy reception court. She wrote a letter that in light of the fear and the anxiety that my prosecutors have all expressed is not only appearing for work, but appearing in reception court, it is arguably a breeding ground for the spread of the exceptional virus my office is operating with a skeleton crew. However, a spokeswoman for the courts provided a statement from the administrative judge, Judge Audrey Carrion, who wrote that she decided to continue reception court so that defendants aren't left waiting in jail. Well, I'm your man, Mr. Politics, and this has been your DMV Daily Dose for Wednesday, March 18th, 2020. For more information on the articles that I've mentioned, just go over to the website at www.dmvdaily.news.